We are not defined by what has happened to us. We are tempted continuously to create an identity for ourselves that is primarily formed in response and reaction to the tragedies and successes that we've experienced. Naomi believes that she is defined by the loss of her husband and sons. And while the trauma of that loss must have been tremendous, her story in Ruth is not defined by that loss, even though at the beginning she tries to identify herself by it. Right up front, after the loss and Ruth's covenant to stay with Naomi, Naomi tries to rename herself Bitterness upon returning home. She tells all her kinsfolk and neighbors in Bethlehem not to call her Naomi any longer, but instead to call her Mara, because the Lord has dealt bitterly with her. But in the very next verse, the narrator calls her Naomi once again. And throughout the rest of the book and all of the rest of Scripture, she is known as Naomi and not Mara. Her attempts to define herself by what happened to her are superseded by God's intention to identify her as God's beloved child with a part to play in the unfolding mission and story of God. It's the same for each of us. We often fall prey to the narratives, both positive and negative, that the world says should define us. But in God's great mercy, we are not what has happened to us. We are who God says we are. We are God's children, called good, redeemed by Jesus Christ, and pulled into the unfolding mission and story of God.